Hello and welcome back to Dicebreaker for our first RPG playthrough of the year. Gasp. I'm Wheels from the video team. I am joined, as ever, by some fantastic people. And this time we've got Matt Jarvis, our editor-in-chief. How you doing, Matt?
Hello, I'm all right, thanks. I'm happy to be here.
And we've also got Alex Meehan, our staff writer. How you doing, Alex Meehan?
Hey, I'm also happy to be here, and I'm enjoying Matt's hat.
It is a good hat, which I think we saw on the Carly Rae Jepsen.
You're breaking the illusion. I knew as soon as I put this on, I was like, I've worn this before, but hopefully it's been a big enough gap. It's been almost a year. It's the only rambling hat I have.
Well, speaking of rambling, we are playing a very wholesome RPG today. It's not quite out. We're sort of playing a pre-release. We've got a couple of the playbooks from the full edition that we received from Possum Creek Games, but we are playing with the starter kit rules that were launched with the Kickstarter. We're playing Wanderhome, which is a game by J Dragon, and it is essentially a game about a world that isn't ravaged by war and full of monsters, but instead is just really lovely and is full of animal folk who are basically good. We're going to go on adventures. We're going to wander the world aimlessly until we find a home. Probably not in this Let's Play, because we're going to be playing for about an hour or two.
We'll find a home away from home.
Yeah.
A home away from home. But
hours.
everywhere in this world is a home away from home. Yeah. And that's what's so nice about it. So we've each selected a playbook, and we've sort of filled them out, which will give us our characters. Let's start with Matt. Who are you playing as today?
I'm playing as Bumbles McGraw. They are the poet, which is one of the playbooks. So they are kind of like well, as much as that, they're kind of a rambling kind of lyricist. Some of the options I have to pick from is kind of being pensive. So I'm a badger, but I'm pensive, and I carry around kind of little kind of water-stained notebooks and just kind of gaze upon things. And I think when you say you're a poet, people instantly roll their eyes. But Bumbles is, is down to earth and isn't pretentious. They're not writing.
It's the working man's poetry.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. They're just writing. They're saying what they see. They're trying to connect with the heart rather than trick the mind.
Yeah.
So that's what they're at.
Speaking of people who are full of heart, Alex Meehan. Let's hear about your character.
Wheels. Okay, my character is called Mrs. Fizby. She is a bat, and her role is she's a moth tender. So insects are like Wanderhome's version of like livestock.
Livestock, yeah.
Yeah, stuff. So she uses various moths to deliver goods and letters and news across the world. And she takes her job quite seriously. She's very proper about it, but she also has a very positive demeanour. And she is just, working. She's working for the weekend.
9 till 5.
Yeah.
She is Dolly Parton in bat form.
Oh, wow. No, I'm seeing her like that.
Well, finally, I'm going to be playing as a nice little man called Archie, who is a peddler, which basically means that he peddles goods. But Archie doesn't peddle goods in the way that most people do, i.e. for profit, but instead he does it out of kindness and just gives things away, kind of like an animal Santa Claus. But he's basically doing it because he's lived a life of wealth and luxury, and he's realised how he's had it all when some people have had nothing, and now he's travelling the world giving away all of his worldly possessions and trying to spark some good in the world. He's a crocodile. He is extroverted and experienced. He wears a hat that used to be fancy and adjustable lensed glasses. But more importantly, he carries around with him, or rather probably is carried around by, a sturdy and resolute beetle that carries my supplies on its back. And I have loads of wares that I can barter, including flowers and teas and toys and smokes and drinks and things. So I'm going to be giving out gifts throughout this world, which is lovely.
Yeah. What kind of beetle? Like a stag beetle.
Yeah, I think a stag beetle.
Presumably not, like a dung beetle would just roll you, so you'd feel quite sick after a roll.
Or it would
just being
roll my
rolled
big
in a ball.
I've also got like a sort of overbearing backpack, so I just want to say I'm not putting all the labour on my beetle friend. You know, I'm carrying as much of this as I can. But yeah, so the Wanderhome is a diceless system. It's also technically GM-less. I think you said it was GM agnostic, Meehan?
Indeed, yes. You could have someone as a guide, but we're playing not like that.
We're playing GM-less, yeah. We're going to have essentially a shared responsibility for playing all the other characters in the world and describing the locations and stuff. But we are not going to be using dice either, which is quite interesting. As I said, this is a diceless system. Instead, it uses tokens and playbooks. So I'm actually going to be using dice to count my tokens, which is going to be slightly counterintuitive.
That's a good idea.
It is a good idea.
Do you know how many we start with?
That's a good question. Does anyone remember?
I'm not sure. I don't think you start with any.
Yeah, that might be it. So basically, in each playbook, there are ways in which you gain tokens, and then there are ways in which you spend tokens. Usually, you gain tokens by sort of helping others, and by sort of like making yourself vulnerable and putting yourself into the world. And then you spend your tokens, to do things that are a little bit more, useful to you or the group. And depending on the sort of situation that you're in, there might be very specific things that you can do to spend those tokens. But as we have our playbooks, we also have a list of, pardon me, we also have a list of things that we can always do. So these neither take or spend a token. So for example, as a peddler, I can know someone who can help. I can intensely examine something. I can sit down and do the math. I can trade for or trade away one of my many wares. I can ask, what can I do for you? I can say I have a deal for you, and then give them a token if they hear you out and consider it. So we'll bring all of those up throughout the game. There's also, sort of generic ones that everyone can use, which are normally sort of conversational and ask people how to do things. But this is probably one of the, what's the word for it? Floatiest RPGs we've played on the channel?
Yeah, it's very open in terms of its storytelling.
Very freeform.
Yeah, it's more a storytelling game than it is a role-playing game, I think.
Yeah.
Me said earlier, like it feels like one of those games where reading through the book, the examples of play are kind of, you might be, just sat around with some friends on grass, just kind of chatting away. People can join in or not as they feel free. It's not as structured as other role-playing games, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, and it's also like it has some quite lovely philosophies on how things in this world should work. Like, everywhere that we go has some kind of problem, but we're not going to solve the problem. We're not like adventurers for hire. We might ease the suffering a little bit, or just help in a small way, but we're not people coming around and solving quests and killing monsters. We're just people traveling the world and hoping to make it a little bit better than we left it. But we're going to be going through sort of town to town if we play like a full-on session. But for this one, we're just going to arrive at one location, we're going to have some fun, we're going to tell some stories, and then we're going to end it there. So we hope you enjoy this. It's going to be a little bit more, as we say, a little bit more freeform than some of the RPGs that we've done so far. But to be fair, how many of the RPGs have we played where we actually bother to respect the rules anyway? So...
I mean, in this rulebook, it points out that everyone in this world is nice,
yes.
Which for us will
this
be the
might
greatest
be a
challenge
us,
of playing.
I mean, for you, sure.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely for me and Matt, who tend to play chaotic and maybe sometimes quite evil characters. So, let's kick things off. For the start, I'm going to be acting as our guide, just to sort of introduce the place in the world that we're in. But as I say, there's sort of characters that we've made beforehand, and like aspects of the town that we're going to sort of pass around freely. So anyone can sort of grab that and be like, I'm going to play this character for a bit. So we might share characters, we might just keep one to ourselves, and we might dip in and out playing our own character or ones around us. But the world that we're inhabiting is one of animal folk, and like we said, insect livestock. It's a world of serene beauty. It's a world with tiny little forgotten gods littered across the walkways. And it's also a world where there was once a war that ravaged, but that war is long over now, and we're in times of peace, and we're in times of loveliness. Meehan has just written the word himbo in all caps on the Google Doc underneath my name, which should give you an idea of how I'm going to be going through this. But also, this is a world of loads of different microcultures, and everywhere that we go has their own little festivals and rituals and rites and things that are different from each other. And the one such place that we're coming up across right now is the town of Windy Willows. It's a town of quite sort of bustling nature. There's always a lot going on from what it seems as we arrive. They appear to be preparing for some kind of event. There are small animals hanging up bunting on the sides of buildings, and people are sort of rolling barrels of mead into the tavern. Market stalls are being set up around the town square. What kind of thing do you think we see as we enter the sort of entranceway of this town, Matt?
Well, I think that one of the surprising things about Windy Willows is people often think of willows like the tree. But Windy Willows is actually named after willows, the name of a kind of mythical butterfly. And it's kind of local hearsay that willows flaps around the local vicinity, and that causes the wind to bustle through. So there are actually very few willow trees. So I think that in some places there are kind of motifs of butterfly wings, maybe even a kind of bronzed statue that I think maybe is pouring water out of the butterfly's mouth, something like that. But kind of, just celebrating the local area and the kind of the folklore that surrounds it.
Yeah, I think if you were to look carefully at some of the handiwork on the buildings, you would see like engravings in sort of butterfly wing patterns and stuff. What's your favourite thing you've noticed about the place so far, Meehan?
I think Mrs. Fisby. I think she's noticed that everyone is moving around. They're obviously off doing jobs that they have to do, but there's not a sense of like, I'm ignoring you, I'm doing my own thing, like get out of my way. It's all very much feels like there's a cooperative element to the way that everyone is kind of like going to their destination, like asking if everyone's okay. There's definitely a sense of community between all the people, like all the animals, or the kith as they're known in the town.
Yeah, there's definitely like a sort of an excitement in the air, I think. And I think maybe the excitement sort of gets the better of someone. Just as we're entering, I think Archie notices a quite sort of prissy looking aardvark who's like carrying like this big bundle of like fabrics and certain like decorations and stuff up to her eyeballs. Like she can barely see where she's walking, and she just seems to be toppling over. And I think Archie, I'm gonna inconvenience myself to help someone else, so I'm gonna gain a token by doing that. But Archie sort of like jumbles forward and just sort of throws the backpack onto the floor, not really concerned with how well the items inside are going to weather that, and just runs forward to just catch and gets a sort of polite thank you from this character.
Yeah, Mrs. Fisby says, "Oh well, Archie, where are you going?" Oh, and she looks down and there's like a little moth on the floor, and she just says to the moth, "It's always in such a hurry to go and help people." And then looks over at your name is Bumbles.
It is Bumbles.
Looks over at Bumbles and says, "So what do you think?"
Bumbles stirs because Bumbles being a poet, as they walked into the town, immediately kind of looked across the landscape and pulled a quill out of, you're not quite sure where, but they just produce a quill, and they actually run it along the black stripes of their badger fur, which is ink, and they are just kind of jotting down in a notepad. So they're jotting down in a notepad as you say this, and they're kind of like, "Who, you talking to me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I was miles away. Can you hear the flapping? You could see why it gets its name.
Mrs. Frisbee just looking around like, what?
Oh well, I suppose, and Bumbles kind of gestures at some of your moths. I suppose when the wings you're working with are so much smaller, you maybe don't need to listen out for the larger, larger creatures out there. Anyway, it's a lovely town, is it not? I mean, how have your moths fared on the trip?
Well, Sheila, she's doing well. And Mrs. Frisbee leans down at the moth that's next to her, kind of pats it on the head, and the moth makes a little sort of vibratey sound, and its antennas move up like that. And she says, I was actually coming here in hopes of giving a gift to someone I've been carrying for a while. And you see her bring out from her vest, she's wearing a tweed vest, a little piece of paper, and she reads off it. Gregory, I believe, is here. I've got a package for him. I was hoping to give to him, but Archie seemed to have run off. But maybe we should go and help him.
Yeah, Archie is sort of sharing some of the load of the materials and stuff that he saw almost fall all over the floor, and you see him sort of offering up some of the space on his beetle as a sort of place to maybe use it to move things a little bit more efficiently. And then he sort of gestures to this aardvark that he's been talking to and points to you two. And from now, I'm gonna grab control of Angela the aardvark. And they're going to come over and say hello. So I'll be playing as them for now. So this kind of like I said, quite prissy, quite sort of proud of their appearance. Aardvark just sort of scuttles over and says, "Oh, how do you do?"
Well, hello there. My name is Mrs. Frisbee. This here is Bumbles. We come here to visit your lovely town. I hope Archie's been giving you plenty of help there.
Archie in the background's tipping his hat. He's like, "Oh, there's all sorts of help." Yes.
He does love to help. He's very good like that. I don't know, I'm not sure I can really take anything off your hands at the moment. And she looks down at herself because she's a pretty small bat. She's got a little squishy face. But if there's anything else we can help you with, I'm sure we would oblige.
Well, so I'm not sure if you've noticed, but we're all quite busy right now. So really, any help anyone could provide, we'll probably take. Are you familiar with the town of Windy Willows? Have you been here before?
Well, I've read several books on it, but I've never had the pleasure of visiting myself. It's quite the honor. I mean, you read one thing, of course, and then to be here in person is quite another. But yes, I mean, thank you for hosting it. What's all the fuss about?
Well, once a year we prepare for our sort of annual party or fete, or however you want to put it. It's sort of a celebration to say that the town's still standing. And just as she says that, this enormous gust of wind just pushes all the way through you. You know when a wind just completely pierces you and comes out the other side. And you see her desperately grabbing her hat and sort of bits of her clothing to try and keep things down.
Yeah, Mrs. Frisbee has to clamp her wings against herself to stop her from being blown away. And the moth Sheila is about to be lifted off the ground. And Mrs. Frisbee goes, Sheila, oh! And kind of grabs her with her wings, her hand wings.
I think at this point you hear in the background people going, "Oh God!" and there's like bits of building falling down. And then I think that's when we all notice that there's like the scaffolding that appears to be part of the construction of this town. You assume that they were building new buildings, but it looks like they just constantly have scaffolding up because they're constantly having to make repairs because the wind is so strong in this place that there are bits falling off all the time and things need to be shored up. And you can see why people are so frantically trying to make preparations because there's a lot of things that need to be nailed down if they don't want to be lost forever.
Wheels, are there, because the inhabitants are so used to this, are they wearing any particular clothes that kind of, I guess, harden them to the weather?
You've definitely noticed, I think, that every hat that's being worn has like a tie underneath it. You know, like a sort of what's the Australian hat called with the little corks hanging off as little dangly bits to tie?
The Australian hat.
The Australian
all
hat.
I've ever known it as.
Yeah, so they always seem to have sort of like ties that are loose that can be tied up. But maybe you see like a few kids who are running around with the ties not tied up and being shouted at by their parents. And things like that.
Yeah, I think actually there must be at least one small, let's say, like a tiny Komodo dragon that was wearing a hat, like a little baseball cap, and as the wind rips through, it just whizzes off, almost quicker than anyone can follow it, just into the distance. And their parents are immediately berating them, but produce one from the bag because it's
they've got a
something-
supply.
Yeah, they're used to it. But they just tie it even tighter underneath the Komodo dragon's neck, and it gives a sad kind of like toddler-esque hiss with its tongue.
Would anyone mind grabbing control of Angela for a second?
Yeah, sure, I can do that.
So the reason I say that is as Archie sees all the sort of like stalls being set up, he says, "Oh, is there a market that's happening?"
Well, yeah. Yes, the market is all part of the fete. You know, we've set up all these stalls and selling various wares, showing off the local produce and kind of what people create here, I suppose. So, but obviously you can see we're having a little bit of trouble. She sees it, like, you know how you have like the kind of like the scaffolding of like the stall, and they often have like coverings over them to protect them against like rain or like hot sun. She's you see like one of them like it's hanging on by two little ties. It's been blown away, and there's like there's a little tortoise like attached to it with its hands, and everyone's kind of reaching out going, oh my goodness. If Frankie sees that, she is not going to be very pleased with what's going on here. I'm sorry. I would recommend you go and talk to some of the stall holders, and I'm sure they'll give you a good idea of what you could be helping them with. And then she just runs off, like bustling off quickly.
Every now and again, just lifting off the ground.
Slightly held by the wind.
I think I sort of just make a little noise to the beetle to start moving him into the town, into the sort of main square, so that we can maybe use some of the buildings as protection from the wind a little bit.
Yeah, Sheila's like still got her wings very close against her, and not Sheila, sorry, Mrs. Visby, and then Sheila is.
I'm sure Sheila does as well.
Yeah, Sheila does as well, but she's got like Sheila's like walking very close in front of her at the moment. She's Mrs. Visby's kind of waddling forward, going, "Ma'am, I must say this wind is awfully strong. It would be good to get a little bit of protection from it. I'm freezing."
I think Archie sits down for a second and says, just give me a moment, and starts rummaging through this massive rucksack that he's always got on. and he sort of like fumbles around and he's like throwing things behind him as he's chucking things out, and there's like frying pans and some kind of clock and like all sorts of bits of scrap paper and stuff that blow off in the wind. And he finds whatever the cottagecore version of a windbreaker is. Maybe some kind of like
probably like fabric.
Like it's made from like a nice thick wool. It's maybe more of like a cloak than a poncho, but it's sort of it's thick enough that when the wind blows on, it just sort of rolls around you rather than just cuts through you. So he's just sort of he finds one or two and passes them out if you'd like one.
Well, thank you very much, Archie. It's very kind of you. And Mrs. Frisbee's going to tie it around her and give Sheila a little pat. Looks at Bumbles. So, y'all gonna put y'alls on now? You gotta protect yourself.
Oh, well, yeah. So Bumbles looks down at their stripes on their fur and notices that some of the ink is starting to run out, because they're actually largely a badger that's white all over, but the ink that they've managed to put on themselves through years of messy scrawling gives the impression of a much kind of more patterned
stripier
coat.
Yeah.
So I think they would. Well, they'd turn to what's the character's name? I can't remember now. Archie. They turn to Archie and say, "I don't suppose you happen to have anything else in there for an old poet by any chance?"
Oh, well, I mean, I've got some mead here if you'd like to drown your sorrows, or I've.
I need to be warm
what exactly
on the
are you
outside,
after?
not the inside.
You don't want the cloak then?
Yes, the cloak.
Now, come on now. Bubbles, what have I told you about having this kind of attitude? Calm down a bit here. Archie's only trying to help.
I'm sorry. The wind cut right to me. I'm sorry.
Come on. If
Thank
we
you for
get
the cloak.
in the cover of these buildings, we'll be more than fine. And Miss Frisbee starts waddling forward towards the inner part of the market.
I think there's like as we walk through, there's a few people maybe who have already set up their stalls and are starting to sort of like place out some of the goods. What kind of thing do you think people sell here?
Like chutneys and jams.
Oh, definitely chutneys.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Heavy objects. So like the pots of chutney are like almost bigger than usual to deliberately weigh them down from blowing away.
They're like jar of pickle size.
Yeah.
And there are like antiques. There's still like selling like old pocket watches or like leather-bound tomes and things like that. Like things that have been passed through multiple generations of people living here.
It's almost like a massive garage sale.
I feel like there should be at least one stall that sells kind of wooden kids' toys like you often see, but it looks like a fishing rod, and then at the end there's a dangling butterfly that represents willows, and it has, you can pull the string and the string runs up the hollow tube, and as you pull it the wings flap.
Yeah, and you can see like Mrs. Frisbee is like looking around attentively as if she's trying to spot someone, and then you see that she stops as you come up to a stall that's kind of like heaving with baked goods, sort of like huge loaves of bread and like pies and pastries and cakes and all those sort of things, and it's so heaped up that she can't see who's manning the stall, so she's like looking up there. Oh, I really wish sometimes I was a little taller. Excuse me there, I was wondering whether you knew where I could find a Gregory. I've got a package for them. Matt, would you like to take control of Gregory the Newt?
Okay, I'll be Gregory. I think Gregory, to respond to you, pokes out one of the baked goods in the middle of this mound.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a hole in the wall, taking the brick out of it. And pokes you and is like, yes, I'm Gregory.
Wheels, that reminded me of Hole in the Wall.
Another one of our more rambling RPG playthroughs. Yeah, I think
something about a package.
I think Gregory is sort of like just looking with one side eye out there.
Ow!
Do newts have their eyes on the side of their heads? I can't remember what newts look like.
They look just like lizards, I think.
Yeah. Mrs. Frisbee goes, oh, well, hello there. I have a package for you. Sent over. I wonder, can I come round and give it to you? Because I don't think I can reach over all of this delicious, all these wonderful baked goods. Can I come round, or?
Yes, of course. Mind the quiche.
Oh, of course. It's a delicious looking quiche. Mrs. Frisbee comes round and just sort of like following behind her like a shy child is Sheila. And then she sort of has a little side pack, like a bag that she opens up. She's rummaging around in there now. Let's see here. No, not that. No, certainly not that. Oh, goodness. And then she pops out. It's like a solid, like, rectangular package. And it's wrapped up in that kind of brown paper with the string and everything. And it's got a little tag on it. Which says, I believe this is for you, Gregory.
Lovely. Thank you. In response, Gregory takes what looks like a pork pie, although the filling is something else, Wills, isn't it? It's...
no, of course it's jackfruit.
It's a jackfruit pie, and Gregory places it into your bag in kind of an exchange for the package. It's almost the same size and shape and colour because of the brown paper on the package. So it's almost like you've swapped two identical objects, but one is edible.
Well, delicious. Thank you very much. I will enjoy this at a later date. I believe that box is potentially some baking tools for y'all to use with y'all business from your aunt.
Yes. We spoke not that long ago, and yes, it's been so hard to whisk eggs, but without a whisk. You've never known difficulty like it.
Oh, I can certainly imagine. Now, I get a token every time I successfully deliver one of my packages or a letter of some sort. So now I have a token I can use. Mrs. Frisbee is gonna pull out a piece of paper she's got in her pocket and just like cross out. You can see like a number of sort of notes on there and names of people. She crosses out one and then puts it back into her pack and says, well, that's one of my recipients taken care of. Thank you very much there, Gregory. We admiring this wonderful fair. We were wondering whether we could help in any way. Certainly seems a bit of a challenge getting things ready with all this wind blowing.
Yes. It's what you'll notice the pastry's very thick for that reason. Otherwise, the fillings just blow straight out.
Is this Newt being played by Richard Ayoade?
Are there loads of little younger Newts around?
You can't see them at the moment because I think they will have been tasked with helping out. No matter how young they are, the Newts always have to help out. But you occasionally notice a pastry in kind of your peripheral vision, almost moving by itself.
Yeah,
and then when you look a little bit closer, there's a couple of small Newts carrying it on their backs up to the mound. So you notice actually, since you've moved around to talk to Gregory, that the hole that Gregory looked out of has actually been filled by a completely different pastry since. You say you're a someone who delivers.
Yes, yeah, I'm a moth tender. I help my moths here go off and deliver things for me, but I also take deliveries myself, particularly when the packages are a little bit too big for Sheila and the like to carry.
Well, could I ask you for it's not very far. Just something to go over to Frankie.
Oh yeah, Frankie. Yes, Angela mentioned her earlier. Oh, of course, we'd be more than happy to carry that for you.
Oh, thank you. Gregory turns, and you see. I apologise to anyone who's a Newt expert and will correct me on this. You see the tongue flick out, and it just darts out. But you almost notice the forked tip of it curling into a shape, like it's communicating with someone. And a few seconds later, you see what looks like a custard tart, but with it. It looks almost more like it's filled with blueberries, or some kind of small dark berry. But as it comes closer, on the back of, as you notice, two small newts, you hear a faint buzzing. And as it gets closer and closer, you realise that those aren't berries, they are flies, and it is just a tart that is buzzing full of flies.
Yummy.
Yes, if you could take this to Frankie, that would be great. While it's still hot or buzzing.
What? Oh, Mrs. Fisby attempts to take the tart, but it's a little unwieldy in her very small bat hands, and she's like, "What? I'm not sure I can take this. It's moving a lot." The flies
you get used to it.
buzzing around in it. I wondered whether one of y'all two could help me with this. And she gestures at Archie and Bumbles.
With an instant, Archie's like, "Oh yeah, of course, yes." I'm going to inconvenience myself by holding that to take a token. But also, I think as we're sort of leaving and getting the pastry sort of secured to make sure it's not going to get damaged on the way, Archie grabs a few things from his backpack. Oh my god! And Toto almost murders me. What are you doing? Good lord!
It's rolled up by the fly pie.
You are rolled up by the fly pie, aren't you? Rummages through the backpack and finds something that when it knocks, it feels metallic. It sounds metallic rather. It sort of rings in the bag. And he's like, yes. Pulls it, and you can tell it was right deep in there. And as it sort of reveals itself as this really kind of sort of ornate but also quite used sort of pastry dish. It looks like it has some kind of seal on it, almost like a family crest. And although it's clearly secondhand, it's still in really good quality. And he just sort of passes it over to his newfound Newt friend, and says, "I've got gifts for everyone today, hopefully, but obviously you're going to be manning your own stall, so I thought I'd give you this now."
Oh, that's very, very kind. And once again, Gregory just immediately offers out another baked good, which is Meehan.
Oh, this is one of those biscuits that are quite they're soft and crumbly, and they've got jam in the middle. It's like one of those, and you can see the sugar crystals shining on the top.
Oh, I couldn't receive anything in exchange. It's a gift, of course.
Well, I'll happily take that if you don't want it, Archie.
Oh, yes, of course. You can have it in my place then, my good friend.
Gregory just shrugs little Newt shoulders. He's like, "Well, thank you for the dish."
Mrs. Fisby takes the biscuit and then sort of looks around and nibbles on it a little bit, and says, "This is delicious. Why, let's go and find the Frankie so we can deliver this pie to her."
Do you actually know the direction we're supposed to be heading in, Mr. Gregory? That is.
Now that I think of it, I haven't seen Frankie in a little while. She tends to move around quite a lot. She's in charge of health and safety, so you can imagine with the wind, there's quite a lot to look at.
Well, could you potentially describe them to us?
She's a frog. No, she's not a frog. She's not a frog. She's a toad. Don't call her a frog. Okay. It's everybody does it. It's not good.
Noted.
We'll make sure not to do that. Let's go and maybe we can ask around to see if anyone saw, spotted her lately. Thank you for your time and for the delicious pastries. She just munches on the biscuit for a little bit.
Archie just sort of like is cleaning his glasses on his shirt and then puts them back on and outstretches a hand. So it's lovely to meet you, my new friend, Gregory.
And you, Gregory doesn't shake your hand, but instead just extends his tongue into your palm. Just a quick little.
I look at it, I'm like, oh, how quaint.
Okay.
All right. I think where do we head next? Where do we find Frankie?
Yeah, we must just go off wandering, trying to find her, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna say, what do you?
Maybe she's on her lunch break in the Verdant Glen.
Yeah,
maybe that's why people haven't seen her for a little while. 'Cause she's taking a well-deserved break right now.
Yeah, Mrs. Frisbee said, "What should we do next? Where do we think we're gonna find this Frankie?"
Well, I mean, why don't we just have a lovely walk around, and hopefully we'll just wander into her.
Well, sounds like a perfectly fine idea. And it means I get to finish my biscuit. And she just.
Do you want to describe the Glen, Meehan?
Yeah, let's talk about this Glen here. So, like.
I'll tell you, it's verdant. I can tell you.
Oh
that.
Yeah. So, like, the towns are gradually, like, it's not a huge amount of like distance between the town and the Glen, but like as we kind of walk past one of the buildings on the kind of outskirts of the market area, we kind of walk into this it's like a very green area full of like trees and various plants and flowers, and like flying through it despite the strength of the wind are these enormous beetles that kind of they're so big that they like you kind of vibrate a little bit when they're like flying above you, and there's other smaller like insects, including quite a few little butterflies just flapping about. It's all very lovely, really. And we walk into there, and you can see sat on a log is not a frog, but a toad.
A very frog-like toad.
Yeah. And she's like eating a sandwich, imagining.
I'll play Frankie.
Go for it.
Yeah, Frankie's got like a hat much like Matt's. And there are 3 different pencils sticking out of it. There's like a sort of notebook sticking out of her pocket. She's got like brown suspenders on and like a sort of relatively crinkled but quite thick and hardy shirt on. And she's tucking into some kind of savoury sandwich of some kind.
Before we make it into the Glen, I think Sheila is gonna open her little side bag out, and get out a pair of reading glasses, And then also get out a little it's a little spyglass, and she's gonna put the glasses on front of her eyes, and then also hold up the spyglass like in front of the glasses, and like adjust it slightly, like, I think I can see someone sat in that glen there. It might well be Frankie.
Yeah, I think as you're doing this, you're getting a good view and talking to us, and then as you look through, you notice that the frog-like toad is going like, and then you realise that the lens of your scope is just like glaring sunlight back into her, and she's just sort of like getting caught off guard by it, and you hear very faintly in the background, you hear her shouting, sort of, who's that? To meet Frankie and the rest of the gang, tune in tomorrow for the next episode of our Wanderhome Let's Play. But until then, have a lovely day.